guys, today is very, very simple. It's basically the same thing we did before with parallel lines cut by transversal. We're just going to flip it. I need to introduce a topic that we normally do earlier in the year, but due to everything with COVID, we're kind of switching it up. So it's easy. It's called the converse. So if I had a statement, if I said like if P then Q, the converse, you just flip it to be if Q then P. You just change your statement. It's like a hypothesis type thing. So we have two angles add up to 180. That is my P. Supplementary, that is my Q. So the statement is if two angles add up to 180, then they're supplementary. If I were to flip this and do the converse, it would be if two angles are supplementary, then they add up to 180. In this case, they're both true, biconditional. We're not going to go through all that stuff here. I just want you to understand the converse is you just flip the order. And the reason you need to know this, I'm not going to test you on and give me the converse of statements, right? But if you're going to flip something, if you have a statement in the converse, right? I just want you to know that all you're doing is changing the order of the statement. And we're going to need that for today's thing. Because all of the things that we learned today, or last time, we're going to be able to do the converse of it. So before, we said if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then corresponding angles are congruent. Well, we're going to flip it. We're going to do the converse and say if corresponding angles are congruent, then the two lines are parallel. Okay? So here you do not know they're parallel. The question would say, for what values of angle 2 and angle 6 would give you parallel lines? So if you don't know they're parallel, if you are proving them parallel, you do the same thing. You just have to show corresponding angles are congruent. And you would say, if corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Okay? And it's the same thing for alternate interior angles. If alternate interior angles are congruent, then two parallel lines. Okay? All we're doing is flipping the order. It's the same exact thing, all right, for all four of them. We don't do same side. We do consecutive interior angles. Okay? Everything's the same. So let's show some examples so you see how that looks. Okay. Look, it says which lines are parallel if one is congruent to two. You do not know they are parallel. We're trying to prove they're parallel, right? So if 1 and 2 are congruent, these are my parallel lines. That is my transversal. So if 1 and 2 are congruent, line A will be parallel to line B. And the reason is, what are these? What diagonals are these? If corresponding angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. So that's the key difference here, guys. If you're proving they're parallel, you do not know they're parallel, you can't use parallel lines. So if you're proving they're parallel, you have to say if alternate interior angles are congruent, then the lines are parallel. Okay. So for what values of x and y prove A parallel to B? All right. So we have to here set up using our rules to show they're parallel. So we can't use vertical angles, right? We can't use linear pairs or supplementary. That is true, right? That is true, but it's not going to prove anything. It's not going to prove parallel lines. It's going to find x and y. So let's look at what I have here. I can do alternate interior. I can do corresponding. I can do same side interior, right? So let's see. We have this one here. I can say this and this are the same. I can say 8x minus 12 equals 3y plus 15. That reason is, if alternate interior angles are congruent, then parallel lines. So it's a system, so I have 8x minus 3y is 27. Next, it doesn't matter which one I do, right? I can do same side consecutive interior. I can do corresponding. I'm going to do corresponding. So that means 10x minus 30 is 3y plus 15. If corresponding angles are congruent, then parallel. See, the only difference is the way you give your reason. It's the order in which you give your reason. You solve everything else the same. So I have 10x minus 3y is 45. So I'm going to solve my system. 8x minus 3y is 27, and 10x minus 3y is 45. Okay. I'm just going to subtract them. Negative 2x, that cancels. The reason I'm subtracting is because they're the same sign. Equals, let's see, negative 18. X is 9. If x is 9, it doesn't matter which one I do. I can do 90 minus 3y is 45. Negative 3y is negative 45. Y is 15. Well, let's check all these things out. Hopefully it all works. Let's see, x is 9. 90 minus 30 is 60. 72 minus 12 is 60. Well, my vertical angles are working. Let's check my y's. 9 times 15, 135 minus 15 is 120. Well, consecutive interior angles are supplementary. That's working, right? 3 times 15 is 45 plus 15, 60. Look at that. Alternate interior angles are congruent. Corresponding angles are congruent. Linear pairs are supplementary. Consecutive interior angles are supplementary. Vertical angles are congruent. They all work. So those are my final answers. Okay. There's a couple problems for you to do on your own, right? We'll go over them in class and then we'll work on the worksheet. Remember, the key here is the difference. Do I have parallel lines? If I do, if two parallel lines cut by transversal, da-da-da-da. If I'm proving they're parallel, I have to say, if alternate exterior angles are congruent, then lines are parallel.